Hello! Winter is no fun in the UK. I've got myself my shiny new WalkSnail goggles, although not so new because they're just bringing out a new version. I can't go outside and fly, so what can you do? There's an answer. It is, of course, a Whoop. I've got this one today. This is the Meteor 75 Pro from BetaFPV, and it is a 75mm Whoop, works on 1S, and it has a WalkSnail VTX in it. You can also get it with a HD0 VTX instead if you want to. Now I've already gone ahead and taken it out of the box, so I can show you what's in there already. We have the actual little quad itself, 22,000 kV motors. I'll show you a close-up of some of the bits to talk about it. You'll notice it's also got the BT20 connector, which is a good connector because you can put more amps through it. Some people don't like it because it's a bit proprietary, but what I also did is got an extra 4 batteries with it, which is fairly cheap, and then you've got 6 batteries, gives you plenty of time. Because in the box you actually do get 2 batteries with it, and these are slightly bigger than normal. These are little 550 HV 1S batteries, and you see there, that's the BT 2.0 thing. And I thought that's quite good because sometimes these little 1S quads come with sort of 300, 350 milliamp hour batteries, and they drain very quickly. So I thought maybe something 550 is going to be a little bit better. You're not going to kill the batteries quite so much. And if you're thinking, hey, I don't have BT 2.0 in my charger, they give you a charger with it. You get this little thing here. It has got USB one side and it's got 2 ports in the other side, and you can apparently charge with both ports. But what you can also do, one of these ports is a test port, and if I plug a battery in, it lights this bit up, which I think is quite cool. We'll have a look at charging in a second. To go with that, you have got a USB with USB-C in the end there, so that plugs in, you can charge it with. You have got this cable here, which is USB to a very small adapter there. This is for plugging in your quad, because what you've got in the WalkSnail VTX is an inbuilt 8GB memory. That basically records as if it was an HD camera with 1080p, so you can take those off. You can get 1080p in the goggles, but you won't get it quite as clean as the recording there, so that's pretty nice. You also get spare set of props, a screwdriver and some spare little screws. Let's go to close up because I want to point out just a few things about the quad, and we'll have a look at this charger while we're there. So I just wanted to show a close-up of this just to talk about some of the features here. One thing you'll notice is this is quite a solid piece of plastic, so this is really just built for these 550s. They slot in there nice and tight and connect. The other things to point out is that is where you connect the WalkSnail VTX. So if you need to upgrade the firmware, or you want to take the recordings off there, that's where you use this cable, but you have to connect it to power as well. You've got around here that little button. That little button is used for a quick press for binding it to your WalkSnail goggles. If you want to upgrade the firmware, after you put it on the internal memory, you have to hold this down for sort of 7 seconds. It does some flashing as well. I've gone ahead and I've updated the firmware on this one because I'm using the latest beta of WalkSnail. The other thing I really liked about this is if you look at the camera, you'll notice, and often I see the problem in Whoops, is the camera can point up quite hard, which is great for racing, but if you're going around the very tight confines in your house, like I am, you need your camera to be fairly neutral. This will actually go to 0%, but you can still go upwards to like 45 degrees. So that's really good. Hopefully, I'm thinking this with a throttle curve, plus the extra weight of these batteries means I should be able to get quite gentle in the house, and I think that's important. It's fine if you're flying outside and doing crazy stuff, you'll want a camera going upwards, or if you're racing, yeah, pointing upwards, but inside you need it quite controllable. Anyway, let's have a look at the batteries. Okay, so this is the included charger, and you can see that's USB port, and if we look here, that is the one labeled test. So when you've got no USB power in there, you go ahead and plug a battery into test, you get it lit up. If you do plug USB in, you'll notice that goes to red, and if I put 2 in, because you can charge 2 at once, that goes to red as well, and that means they're both charging. When one of them has finished charging, you'll see it's gone green, and that means that one's finished. In terms of the power this takes, this is regular USB 5 volts. It doesn't do anything special with PD. They do a multi-charger which does 6, which can take a PD input, and you can do 6 batteries at once, which would get you a reasonable amount of airtime. Okay, so I've already made a few changes in BetaFlight, but I thought I'd just show you what I did and what it came with. It actually comes with BetaFlight 4.4, which is handy. The USB is at the bottom, so I can never get this flat on the table, so it's going to look a bit weird, but don't worry about that. Ports-wise, we've got an actual separate port for the serial RX for the receiver. Although it's built on the board, it's not an SPI, which means you can update it separately. So I've already gone in, I've let it go into its Wi-Fi mode, and then I flashed it with version 3.3. There is a little bit of something to take note of when you flash it. When I connected to the ELRS Wi-Fi network, it was running 252 and this firmware called DIY 2400 RX ESP 8285_SX1280. This is not the firmware to upgrade it to. This has been tidied up. So if you come to upgrade it, and I needed to because all my radios are on 3.3, use the device category of BetaFPV 2.4 gig and the devices BetaFPV 2.4 gig AIO RX, and all will be good. You'll also notice that we've got the VTX MSP because this is 4.4, which means we can use a whole HD canvas, which is quite handy. Configuration wise, there's not much going on there. I've just changed my name to Curry K, and I've turned air mode off because I like to have it on a switch. I've changed the power and battery slightly, so I boost the max cell voltage. I give my warning at 3.3 and my minimum at 3. Basically, I just want that warning on the screen when it's 3.3 and it's time to land, because I'm never too far away, so that's okay. Pit tuning wise is where I did something a little bit different. Not so much in the PIDs, just in the rate profile. If you go to rate profile settings, I've basically got an outside and an inside setting. Rate profile number 2 is my inside setting, and what I've got there, I've got quite gentle rates, and I've scaled the throttle with a throttle limit of 70%. I had a bit of a fly in it. I tested it out. I decided what was good indoors, and about 70% worked for me. While if we go to the outside profile, you'll see we're on like 1,000 degrees per second max, and my throttle limit's obviously 100%. I found that quite useful for going indoors. It will depend on the size of your house. Where I'm quite tight here, I generally fly angle inside, and I need to be able to go quite gently. Mode wise, it had some modes set up. I just redid them, so I was happy with them. And on my OSD, I set things up how I wanted them to, trying to put things in the right space so I can still have bits in the bottom here and up here for my WalkSnail goggles to tell me what's going on. Yeah, and that was about it. Nothing much to change, just a few bits and pieces. So yeah, let's get on and fly it. So I did all 6 batteries inside the house over a couple of days, but I thought I'd just take you through one of them, show you what it's all about. And instantly I'm quite at ease flying this because the camera angle is low enough and the power to weight ratio is just about right. I feel like I can zip this about the house quite nicely. Now outside it wasn't raining, but my goodness, there was a hell of a wind going on there. It was really hard to fly outside. I found it quite interesting how if you look at the top right corner, you can see the Express LRS dynamic power going up and down. And you can see the focus modes here. It wasn't in the places where I thought it would be. I thought the alley would be the worst place. But just sort of out here in the garden seems worse for some reason. There is only sort of a little tiny antenna for Express LRS. You haven't got the normal sort of T-piece you would. So that's quite possibly why that is bumping up. And ditto, we haven't got an amazing antenna for WalkSnail, but it's certainly good enough for doing this sort of thing around the house. Now what I liked about this, aside from being able to throw it around, I felt I could go really slowly and accurately. It was fairly easy just to keep the throttle range right size and a reasonable hover, go into sort of tighter gaps and stuff like that, and quite use my whatever I had around the house as a little bit of obstacles to go through.
that was no problem. Over here I'm trying to get underneath the washing, which is a very tight gap. And again, this is pretty good for bumping into stuff. You already saw me crash outside, not a problem. I'm bumping into bits and pieces here, but I'm just sort of bullying my way through there, if you like, just bouncing around off stuff, and it's not a problem. It's really interesting for me. I haven't really flown in the house in digital HD before, so it's like, oh, I can see this really clearly, or I can read what my DVD collection says and things like that. And this is what I always like to do. I always like to see if I can sort of gently come up here and go over that fan blade. My goodness, it's dirty up there. I'm trying to clean it best I can, but need a ladder. So these things, it said on the spec, it says the 550 battery will get you up to 5.5 minutes off flight. In my experience, flying around sort of this way, it was generally about 4 minutes. I did do one flight where I tried to be really gentle all the way around, and I got to just about 5 minutes, but it was really hitting the 3.3 volts then, and I wasn't that comfortable in going forward. So I'm not sure you could get 5.5, but you get 4 minutes of thrashing about quite happily or doing mixed stuff. I think if I'm outside and I'm really sort of going for it, I reckon this probably come down to more like 3 minutes, but still pretty good for the sort of batteries and the Whoop. No, I'm used to getting a lot less than that for the comparative stuff. But yeah, this is really fun just to fly around the house. It's so easy to get around these gaps. I have had Whoops, and they're just set up. They seem to be set up just for racing, and I find them really, really hard to control inside the house. What I'm looking for in my Whoop is something that I can go slow enough or fast enough in the house. And fast in a house isn't very fast. It just feels like you're going fast, but really is barely above walking pace most of the time. And yeah, this is really nice for that. I feel it's the basis of having the throttle curve set correctly, and the power to weight being right, and especially being able to move that camera just the way you want to means it's never too tricky to go in those tight spaces, to move around the house, to do whatever you like. So yeah, very happy with its indoor performance. The question now is, how will it do outside? And going to put it in full acro and try and find out once the weather gets better.
Well, welcome everybody. It's not raining for a change. It has been raining, and I don't know if you guys can see just the level of mud and puddles and everything. It actually looks beautiful. Where the sun's coming through, it's lighting up all the dampness and sparkling, but that means we have to be very, very careful about not going down, because let's face it, this puddle is deeper than this quad is, so if we go down there, we're not flying again today for sure, or maybe ever. So yeah, maybe start off a bit gentle, try not to crash, try and be careful with landing, and I just want to see how it performs outside. Obviously we're going to acro, we're bumping the power up all the way, and seeing if it flies nicely in this nice little proximity area with some trees.
So on my first battery, I really wanted to just get a feel for it, but I instantly felt like my camera angle wasn't up enough because it did feel a little bit sluggish. But I continued just flying it, so I just did basically the route to the end of the forest here, where it's going through sort of a lot of obstacles, just to make sure I had a picture, and you can see focus mode kicking in there. Amazingly, the Express LRS transmitter went up to 1 watt there, which is quite a lot. Clearly it must kick in the next power, where the RSSI drops a little bit less than I would ever bother putting the power up. And this is the other route I like to go, just to test the distance a little bit, just up here, which is a much cleaner line of sight. The only thing that surprised me coming back here is when I turned round, I think I go past a person just sort of sitting there, which I thought, that's a bit weird. If you just look on the left there, you can see sort of a figure. Weird. Anyway, that was battery number 1. So I got back and I just tilted the camera up a bit more to see what I could get. Battery 2 didn't go so amazing. We hit a load of reeds on the start, and as I sort of speeded up, I caught another one and went over, and I was sure I was under the water, which was a real worry. Worried it went in a puddle, but I just found it upside down on the grass, so hopefully, as we get this
wetness out, we should be flyable again. Let's see.
Now, I'm not sure what it was. I've flown HD quads here before, but I've never quite had it so everything looks so sharp and easy to do. So I was flying around under things, over things, through the little gaps, but I'll show you a whole flight. This is the last flight I did here, and you will notice there's no OSD. So this is the recording from the inbuilt memory in the WalkSnail VTX. There is about room for between 5 and 6 batteries, depending on the length of your battery. About 20-ish minutes, I reckoned. But yeah, I was just having great fun with it, and I think it's the light coupled with the difference of different colour leaves and stuff in the trees. It just let me see things a lot easier. So picking out scraggle was much easier. The only thing I had problems with is stuff sprouting from the ground. But yeah, I had an absolute ball just going around these trees, finding the gaps underneath the trees, and I thought it looked beautiful. It was just a gorgeous day. We've got all the autumnal things. I was forgetting the fact that if I crashed it, it would be most likely underwater, and just having a great time. It's a great playground, but you do need a decent day, not much wind, and with the sun out, it's a lot better. The only thing I felt this quad struggled on, because initially I thought maybe it's a bit slow, maybe it's a bit heavy. There is that balance of this is slightly heavier for a 1S quad, but it takes that larger battery. I only noticed it when I was doing the split S, and as I was trying to pull out of it, you'd hit that prop wash. But aside from that, it was not a problem. The thing that was my mistake is I poked the camera up, but I didn't really tighten the screws, so that seems to have come back down again. So you can just see the outline of one of the ducks on the left hand side of the screen there. But yeah, this forest is just fantastic for going. It didn't feel brilliantly quick, but again, when you go around this sort of proximity stuff and you're looking for things to go in and out of, it's absolutely brilliant. It's just amazing. There is like a word of warning if you do this. Try and sort of memorise, trees that look like something, because if you go down, the beeper in this is very, very quiet. You have to be practically on top of it to hear it. So if you get into your head like, oh, that's a big tree which is different from the other trees, or there's a rock there or something like that, and at least you know you're near that place, you'll find it a lot easier to go in and get your quads again. Because it was different colours, I wanted to get up a little bit higher and just have a look, and I just thought, I was just blown away by how nice the day was. It wasn't very warm, it was about 7 degrees Celsius. Battery wise, I started off and the battery's lasting about 2.5 minutes, but as I was going into it, I was getting about 3 minutes. So it's kind of what I thought. About 4 good minutes indoors, about 3 reasonable minutes outside, which is, not too bad for this sort of quad and this sort of flying. It did say like up to 5.5 minutes on this battery. In my experience, it's not true, but I was getting decent flight times, and having 6 batteries with me, which are fairly easy to charge up all at once, was really good. Just gave me a load of flying and had time to really understand how the quad worked and get a bit of confidence in how it flew, and try not to look at my landings here. They weren't great. I landed and then it's like jigged itself off the end. I had 1 battery left, so my idea was to do a better distance test. There's this long piece of a sort of piece of grass. It's a cut through to another part of the woods, and it is just over 400 metres long, and I thought, oh, I'll fly that, and I had to really stand on the gravel, making it sort of the max distance I could get. And I was a little bit nervous about this one. I flew this on WalkSnail before enabled focus mode, and I got like a latency in the worst bits of going like over 120 milliseconds. It was terrible. So I was taking it pretty easy, trying to sort of feel it out. There are bits of bush and trees along the way to sort of cover the signal, so I was keeping an eye on the signal for WalkSnail, which you can see is a number down on the bottom left there. When we use the normal goggles, it's more of an indicator display on a different place. And I was thinking like, oh, this isn't going well because I've got focus mode heavily going on both sides. But I looked at the latency and it was still saying 20 milliseconds, and then it cleared itself up a bit, and I'm like, actually, this seems all right. The ELRS has jumped up to 1 watt again. I can't get over this. Since I enabled dynamic power, I was like, really? I would normally fly this on 100 milliwatts and it would be fine. Admittedly, the RSSI would be like lower, but it seems quite incredible. But yeah, this is about 400 meters just over distance, which for a little quad like this, I'm thinking is pretty good. And I was a little bit worried about the turning and stuff, but latency has stayed the same. The signals stayed the same. In fact, I think the signals actually improved slightly. Weirdly, as I was taking off, a woman walked straight past me and down the route I was going, which I thought was a bit odd. My general rule of flying is to attempt not to fly over anybody or anybody's property or anything, even in a little quad like this, because you just don't know what can happen and people can get quite upset about it. But I can't do much about it if someone marches past me having watched me take off and goes down where I was flying. So all I could do is get a little bit more height to give her a bit more room. You can tell it's a little bit windier as we get height up there, because it's we're in a little bit more area where the wind can get us, but it's not as sheltered. But yeah, it made it 400 meters through relatively difficult conditions, quite low down. Very impressive for such a little quad with these tiny little antennas.
Well, this was the best WalkSnail experience I've had outside, and I don't know what it was. Perhaps it's the lighting and the fact that everything's a different colour, nothing's smeared together. It looked really nice. I'm running the beta firmware, perhaps there's been an improvement there. But when I'm out on the big quad, I'm normally out on a big field and it's just like some grass, so that doesn't look amazing. Going through the trees in this, that looked the best it's looked for me. You really got the idea that, right, this is HD now, this is proper. Anyway, this quad, it's nicely balanced. There are some compromises because it is quite balanced, so it hasn't got the dynamic superpower that a tiny little racing would, but because of that, you get to fly it inside the house at a speed you can manage, and you get to take it outside and you can still have good fun in a proximity environment. This is a very cool little quad. This is the Meteor 75 Pro, and you can check it out in the description below. But there's more, because it can't have escaped your attention. It's coming round to Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and I look a little bit confused because this comes after Thanksgiving. We don't have Thanksgiving there, but somehow the idea of going out and shopping has caught on in the UK and other places like that. And BetaFPV have some good deals as well. Now, I have to say, in the latest products I've been reviewing for them, they've kind of been killing it. We had some great stuff. We had the Super G. This is the twin transmitter thing, the first commercial product to be able to run the Gemini protocol, and this went hand in hand with the Super D True Diversity RX. That's a little twin 2.4 antennas, and you can run with these two Gemini mode or just run it in diversity and have something very good. Those are both very good. I ran this one, the Super P, I see a name convention coming on here, in my mini Talon wing, and I couldn't get the LQ to drop below anything. This is a 14 channel PWM receiver. I mixed running S-Bus and PWM. You can also run ZRSF for it if you want to, but the fact it's got all those channels, it's really good for fixed wing pirates. Again, diversity. You could run Gemini through it, you can run diversity through it, very good. And do you know, they're one of the few people that's supporting the 868-915. This is the little Nano RX, this is an 868 version. The only thing they're doing wrong here is they're shipping it with this antenna. This antenna is not a 2.4 antenna, it's certainly not an 868 or a 915 antenna, it's just this antenna that's not going to get you much range. The whole sort of point of using these is you need to use a proper antenna for it to get the range out of it. I hope they change that and start shipping with these. You have to get these separately at the moment, which is a bit silly, but they are one of the few that actually does 868. If you're looking for that ultra distance, then this could be a solution for you. Now, the great news is there's a 15% discount going on BetaFPV products. There are some limitations, there are some very strict things about where the date must be. I'm going to put all those down in the description, but feel free to use the code and get yourself a bargain while you can. Anyway, I hope that review has been helpful, and I will catch you next video. Bye for now.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.